Okay, so let me clear up a little bit of controversy for you surrounding the woman that was caught in adultery, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and Christ. Because a lot of people, they have been taught, have said that this is or was the first act of grace on Christ's part. Others have, come up with other, fantastic stories and or deliveries on it. But I want to show you what they haven't showed you with respect to what's written, right? And this is going to be based on what the law says around this woman that was caught in adultery. And then after that, you can decide, for yourself. But I want you also to understand we're going into this, not based on what I think, not based on what I feel, but we're looking at this based on what's written. So I want to start out with Ecclesiasticus 17:7, where it says, they receive the use of the 5 operations of the Lord. So you know about the 5 operations: taste, touch, sight, smell, hearing. You know about those 5, right? Everybody, have those 5. He says, and in the 6th place, he imparted them understanding, right? So everybody doesn't have understanding. You might say, wait a minute. I mean, understanding is understanding. But what we're talking about is wisdom, God's wisdom. Everybody doesn't have the understanding of God's wisdom. So for the 6th sense, God have given some of his people, the chosen, understanding. And in the 7th place, an interpreter. Okay, and in the 7th, speech. So we have 6 is understanding, 7 is speech. Now, again, you might be like, well, everybody talks. We all, are dealing with, speech in some sense. But this speech is to be an interpreter of the wisdom that the Creator has laid out in this book that it has confused so many. That's why I'm here to clear up the controversy. But the interpreter of cogitations thereof, meaning these are deep thoughts, right? Because a number of us, we meditate on this stuff day and night. We eat, we sleep, we drink it, we're out working, whatever we're doing, it's like we can't stop thinking, about this. So God have made some of us to be interpreters, of our deep thoughts, that we can explain the wisdom that he has put forward in this book, that we could give the understanding, of it. So we go to Psalms 1:11 and 10, and it tells us the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So first, we got to have this respect, for God, that we can obtain wisdom. And then he says, a good understanding have all they that do his commandments. So we must look at what it means to do his commandments, to then have understanding of the wisdom that God has for us to live from, and to share, with others. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endure forever. All right, so let's jump off, into it. Because I want to clear up this controversy surrounding Christ, the Pharisees, and the woman caught in the act of adultery. Okay? Let's see. All right, so let's go. We're going to look at Exodus 20:14. Thou shalt not commit adultery. So now let's understand what is the law surrounding adultery. I'm going to give this to you up front, and then we're going to go into the backstory as to what happened with this woman, with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and with Christ. And we're going to come to see, did Christ, was this his first act of grace, or did they get it all wrong and Christ was just following the law, right? Leviticus 20:10, it says, and the man that commit adultery with another man's wife, even he that commit adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. I'm just going to leave it like that for you for right now. Now I want to go into the story so that we can clear up the controversy. Now that we understand you shouldn't commit adultery, now we understand the law that's surrounding adultery. Now let's look at what this woman was charged for and come to understand why Christ did not, sentence this woman to death. And what it was that the Pharisees and the Sadducees were actually trying to do. Because I think that, for the most part, really needs to be talked about when we look at this, is like the intention of the Sadducees and the Pharisees. So number one, we're going to read in John 8, 1 through 12. Right? John 8, 1 through 12. All right, let me check this right here. John 8, 1 through 12. All right, so John 8, 1 through 12. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him. So first of all, people were no longer giving the attention, to the old guard, the Sadducees and Pharisees. And he sat down and taught them. So they were upset because Christ was here reforming, the concept of the heritage, bringing people back to the truth of how we should live our life according to the law of life that God provided to us for the heritage. And the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they were distorting it, right? And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. So here we go. The scribes and the Pharisees, okay? Y'all forgive me because I know how much of a stickler, you all are. You'd be saying, he said the Sadducees. He didn't say the scribes, okay? So we're talking about the scribes and the Pharisees. Brought unto him a woman taken. Y'all pay attention. And we already read, what the law for adultery is in Leviticus 20 and 10. This woman was taken in the act. She was taken in adultery, right? And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery. The very act. So they're saying, we caught this woman in the act of adultery. Now, Moses in the law commanded us, pay attention, that such be stoned. Remember what the law in Leviticus 20 and 10, what it said, but this is what they said. They said, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. Now, was that true? Right? But what say thou? Okay? They said, tempting him. Now, you got to understand, like I said, They were tempting him. They were, hoping to trick him. They were testing his level of understanding within the law, because they had already went about to pervert it, bringing this woman before him, saying she was caught in the act of adultery. So they were testing, they were tempting. Y'all look up what tempting means to see what it is that they were doing, right? But they were tempting him that they might have to accuse him. Do you see this? It was a setup. So Christ wasn't working off of no act of mercy. He was understanding the environment, the atmosphere, what it is that they were attempting to do based on the law, how they were perverting it, saying this woman was caught in the act, right? But Jesus stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground. I don't care what he wrote, on the ground. A lot of people want to try to say he wrote this, he wrote that. I don't care what he wrote on the ground. As he heard them, as though he heard them not. So basically, he was ignoring, them, because he already knew, what the setup was. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And boy, when I tell you the religion of Christianity, how they've taken this verse and how so many other people have misused this verse. But I'm going to give you the meaning behind what Christ was actually saying as it pertains to this woman being caught in adultery, and what he was saying to the scribes and the Pharisees right here when he says, he that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. Right? And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And when they heard it, being convicted by their own conscience. Now, why were they convicted by their own conscience, you all? Right? They were convicted by their own conscience. And I'm going to tell you why they were convicted by their own conscience. Went one by one, being at the eldest, even to the least. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw no one but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Have no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Then Jesus spake again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follow me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Reforming he is the way of the heritage that the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they had perverted. But let's go back to this where he said in number 7, he that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her. So this is Christ understanding the law as we look at Leviticus 7:20, where he said a man and a woman caught in adultery, and the man that commit adultery with another man's wife, even he that commit adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer, and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Let's look at another one in Deuteronomy 22:22. He says, if a man be found lying with a woman married to an husband, then they shall both of them die. Both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So shalt thou put away evil from Israel. So both must be put to death. So when you look at number 7, and he says unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. Basically, he's pointing out to them, you all have not followed the law itself, because if you're telling me that you caught her in the act of adultery, the law says both the man and the woman should be put to death. But they only brought the woman to him saying, what shall we do? Saying, hey, the law of Moses, say that this woman should be stoned. What say you? But he understood, no. You guys only brought the woman. So this was not mercy on his part. It was just him recognizing the error on their part for not bringing both the man and the woman, so she could not be charged. But I assure you, had this woman and this man been brought before him and asked, what say you based on the law of Moses, he would have been left with no other option but to say they should be put to death. So when he said, let you without sin, he that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone, at her, they realized their corruption, that they only had the woman there. So that's why when they heard it, being convicted in their own conscience, they went one by one, walking up out of there with their head down. And he asked the woman, where are those that are, accusing you? She's like, I don't know. He's like, well, I don't accuse you, right? He could not, accuse her, at that point. So for those that have expressed, that this was about an act of, a first act of grace, come on, y'all. This was clearly about them trying to entrap and or set Christ up, him understanding the law, them recognizing the error, in the law, and as Christ explained to them, if you are without sin, go ahead, convict this woman, throw the stone. And they walked away realizing there's nothing that can be done because they themselves did not follow the law, right? So let this be understood as it pertains to John 8. And as we talk about the woman, Christ and the scribes and the Pharisees, it was not about the act of grace. It was the error in the law that the scribe and the Pharisees in producing the woman by herself, not bringing both the man and the woman. Because I assure you, if they would have brought both the man and the woman, this whole thing would read differently, right? But this is just an example of how, they attempt, or how corrupt, they were, and why, Christ was there to reform, the understanding of our heritage, the law of life that God gave us, for this heritage, right? So with that, you all, just take this, and next time you hear somebody talking, about this story and they sound confused, well, just remember Deuteronomy 22 and 22, Leviticus, 20 and 10, that explains the law of adultery, and just come to understand the reason why Christ didn't, accuse this woman is because they did not produce both the man and the woman according to the law.